Okay, guys, we're going to do a little bit of talking about the intake manifold for the Vortec EQ heads. Customer called up and says, I want you to port them. If they don't work out, we'll get something else. So I thought that was awesome. I actually stayed up till about midnight last night working on some, but I left two runners untouched so you can get an idea of the shape. Overall, they're pretty decent the way they're designed. Supposedly these were designed by CFD. And remember I said about the bottom plenum? Look at how big that plenum is. It's massive. Now, I think these runners come in at a bit of an angle, but the reason they do that is because you've got the upper H kind of in the way. They're overlapped. Okay. Now, I got these two I started working on. And they're not finished, but I wanted to do a little flow action and see what kind of an increase we're going to get. So what I did was okay, I flowed this port, which if you take a look at it, it really isn't shaped that much different than a Victor Jr. port. And it has enough area to flow 270 CFM. Okay, I flowed this one, and then I turned the intake manifold around and I flowed this one. So I got a flow from a lower H, and I have a flow from an upper H. Okay, I also did a little bit of work to the head. I changed the back cut a little bit more. I made a little bit wider back cut. I narrowed the guide boss a little bit. I added a small 70-degree cut under the 60 inside the bowl. And I opened the pinch just a touch. Okay, so that's these flows here. It actually picked up a little bit. I mean, 210 at 300 is quite good. All right, picked up, but it didn't top out as well. But I'm still pretty happy with it the way it is. And then I flowed Weiand lower H. Okay, and I put little pluses. That is every flow is just a little bit more than it was unported, which it should be. If it's ported correctly, it should go up. You know, and we can compare. Okay, 112, 114, not a huge jump. 160 to 167, that's a decent amount. 186 to 190. Okay, and then it tops out almost exactly the same. And I tried it without the carburetor. The carburetor sucks out about 6 CFM. So with no carburetor, it would be, you could add 6 CFM to that. Okay, so the lower H with the giant plenum actually flows better than the upper H does. Now, I didn't do this port without. I didn't do any of them untouched. But it's not as good as this. It's not as good as the unported one. So I started to overthink the entire thing because I tend to do that. And I went online and I started digging up some. I was thinking, you know, in the 90s, I used to do Edelbrock Performers with the two different size runners. And I would port them out, and I could pull 7,000 RPM out of that, and it would make really good power. And I'm thinking, this manifold is actually designed way better than that. You know, I mean, this has got, these runners here are really nice. Let's see if I can get you some light. I mean, that is a pretty nice runner right there. But they're not all that nice. I mean, but I think that's part of the design. If you look at the if you look at the top, right, you've got 2 long runners and 2 short runners. Okay, what would that do? Well, the 2 longer runners, let's say if they have the same area, right, and they're pretty close, these two will have a little bit lower torque peak than these guys, right? And if you look at the bottom, you've got the same thing. These are shorter runners, which may be why they're on a little bit of a crazy angle, is they wanted to shorten them up. Interesting to think about, right? And these are a little bit longer. But in reality, you've got 2 really short, 2 a little bit longer, right? These are even longer, and these are really longer. So you really have 4 length runners on one intake manifold. What do you think that's going to do? Oh, so so I went and I did some research lunchtime on the computer, like unported intake manifolds and how much power they were getting out of them. So I figured this is similar in size to Edelbrock EPS as far as internal area, even though I like this design better than the EPS. And true, they were on a much bigger cylinder head. They had them on TFS 215, but it was like a 560 horsepower engine, and they put a intake similar to this on it, and it dropped down to like 506 horsepower. And I'm like, all right, so that's unported. We should be able to get this done with this intake manifold. Now, it is a little bit on the more restrictive side, so how would you counteract that? I think I'd put a bigger carb on it. Yeah, we could fool around with spacers and so forth if we wanted to, but I don't think we're going to need to. I think if we put a good size carb on this, it'll get it done. Now, the only carb I have in stock is that 770. I could pull the 900 CFM fuel injection off the Chevelle just as use it as an air valve and see if that makes a difference. That would be an interesting thing. I mean, the hood of the Chevelle hasn't been open in a long time. It's probably a good idea for me to go in there and spin the engine over and so forth. But I did that. I did a little obsessing. And then after I flowed everything, I gave another little shot of Dicom. And little kind of interesting how the Vortec works, right, with the chamber and so forth. It really wants to be, straight shot. My short side radius is a little fast still. What did I have? Last bunch of air speeds. 400 on the short side. I'd like to ease that up, but between 400 and 370 isn't too bad. I'd still like to lower that 200 a bit on the roof. And the pinch, I opened it a little bit, but the pinch is really the restriction. I mean, the pinch will flow 260 on this, but the area on that says that should go 270, no problem. So I'm tempted to work on the pinch a little bit more. That may not be as easy as say go, because just like the Dart, one side's got a nice amount of meat, the other side's thin as paper. So until I get my specific gaskets and so forth to know exactly where I'm going to end up everything, I'm kind of stuck. But that's what I'm thinking about as of right now. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have a good night.